Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we're starting our event. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to our event on shift to renewables in Southeast Europe, NDCs and NECPs as financial roadmaps. My name is Gürbüz Gönül. I'm the Director for Country Engagement and Partnerships for IRENA, and I will be your MC as well as the moderator of the panel discussion after the opening. So, for introductory remarks, I would like to first invite Mr. Francesco La Camera, Director General of IRENA. Mr. La Camera.
So, thank you, Gürbüz. So, Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our Global Renewable Hub here at COP28. Together with the Energy Community Secretariat, we appreciate the opportunity to continue the dialogue focusing on the strategic framework on NDCs and NECPs as a financial roadmap for the shift to renewables in Southeast Europe. This decade is critical to our Paris Agreement success, and as IRENA's World Energy Transition Outlook 2023 reminds us, we are currently off track. To address this significant acceleration in the deployment of renewable energy storage, and renewable fuels, coupled with tangible progress in energy efficiency and electrification of end-use sectors, are required to put the world back on course to meet global climate goals. Yesterday, the COP28 pledge of triple renewables and doubling energy efficiency was launched with 118 signatory countries. Today, there are 123, and I hope this number will continue growing. This is a tremendous achievement, but we need to back up our commitments with action by working together at global and regional level. Southeast Europe is endowed with significant and diverse renewable energy resources. Now is the right moment, with renewable deployment being the most cost-effective way for achieving our climate goals and ensuring energy security. IRENA's 2023 Renewable Cost Report highlights that last year in Europe, electricity generation costs were reduced by 176 billion of US dollars. It is both technically and economically feasible to use locally available clean energy solutions to decarbonize the power sector and significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the region. It is an opportune moment for many countries in the region to take strong, decisive steps toward the energy transition, making use of local solutions and boosting local employment opportunities. We welcome the European approach for development of detailed and synchronized energy transition roadmaps, namely the national energy and climate plans, which will be aligned and reflected into the upcoming revision of the NDC in 2025. IRENA has consistently stressed the energy transition is systemic and need to be addressed as such. We have outlined three pillars crucial for the structural transformation of energy system. These include infrastructure, policy and regulation, and institutional and human capacity. Scaling up investment into diverse renewable energy technology in power and end-use sectors, combined with further improvement of the infrastructure, should be prioritized. Success is in our ability to have a well-educated and skilled workforce, coupled with increased public awareness. I'd also like to encourage development partners, financial institutions, and other stakeholders to continue working together and offering technical and financial support to Southeast Europe toward the energy transition. We need to secure an energy transition that is economically viable and socially acceptable. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank our organizer again and to all of you for joining us today. I'm looking forward to the fruitful discussion ahead. IRENA remains ready to continue working with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director General. Now let me invite Mr. Sebastian Burduja, Minister of Energy of Republic of Romania, to deliver his opening remarks.
Hello everybody, I hope you can hear me well. I will try to speak loud enough to cover the sounds next door. I want to congratulate IRENA for this wonderful event, and I'm very honored to open it ahead of a wonderful panel. And I've met some of the panelists. I deeply respect them. Director General, grazie mille a lei. It's a wonderful occasion to briefly share with you some of the insights from the Romanian experience. First of all, Romania, based on the studies that we've seen, has arguably the largest solar potential in Southeast Europe. And we have dedicated quite a bit of resources to leverage that. I'll give you one specific example. In the Recovery and Resilience Facility, that is the funds that are granted by Europe to help us recover after the pandemic, we had a total allocation for solar and wind investments of 460 million euros. We've received an overwhelming number of applications, 742 projects. We were supposed to build at least 950 megawatts. With that same budget, we will finance, by the end of the call, over 2,000 megawatts. So that speaks a lot about the potential of the industry, and little grant funding can really boost private sector funds. And I urge you, as you carry on this discussion, to explore if this is the case in other countries and see how we can learn from these good practices. We have, by the way, also the Modernization Fund, which is fueled by essentially selling greenhouse gas emission certificates. And we have a total allocation of about 16 billion euros. Over the next 6 months, we will put into the market 1.5 billion for solar and wind, for private and public beneficiaries. And we expect that to go equally well. So from a capacity of around 1,500 megawatts solar, 3,000 megawatts wind currently, we should have no issue in reaching or exceeding even 10 gigawatts by 2030 for both. Moreover, we've seen through multiple government programs a lot of interest from individual households. So in 2019, we had 300 households that put up solar panels to cover their energy needs, and actually a bit more than that to inject into the network. We've adopted legislation. At the end of 2021, there were less than 20,000. Today, there are more than 100,000 Romanian households that have solar panels. Some of them also have batteries, and we're trying to encourage that because it's a lot easier for the networks and for the grid. But essentially now the total output produced by these households is almost as much as the nuclear plant we have in Cernavoda, at least the installed capacity. So the appetite in the market from private companies, from individual households is tremendous. And in addition to grants, we're also launching the CFD, the Contract for Difference mechanism. That essentially sets a fixed price for 15 years. We will have an auction early next year at the latest, and we're hoping for a decent strike price, a very competitive strike price. And that will add another 5,000 megawatts to the grid, 3,000 solar, 2,000 wind. Last but not least, we're also very ambitious on offshore wind. The potential in the Black Sea is massive. The World Bank puts it at 76 gigawatts, of which at least 20 should be easily commercially built. So by the end of this year, we will have an offshore wind law. By 2025, we will have an in-depth study, including an environmental assessment of the entire area and identify go-to areas for the investments. And by 2032, 2033 at the latest, we should see the first solar wind farms in the Black Sea. All in all, I think it's exciting to be part of this transition. I want to assure you that Romania will play its role. We're fortunate enough to have a very diverse mix of energy, from hydro, which goes up to 45% certain days, to nuclear, gas, as well as solar and wind now. So we are open for business. We're also open to share our best practices, and we're very happy to work together with IRENA. Thank you once again for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you very much, Minister. We have a very interesting lineup of speakers for the panel discussion, but before we move to it, I would like to invite our co-host of the event, Energy Community Secretariat, and its director, Mr. Artur Lorkowski, to set the scene for us for the panel discussion.
Thank you very much for this opportunity and for co-hosting together with the Secretariat this event. I don't know, Francesco, we are doing that, I think, for the second time, right? Whether this is already a tradition or not, but definitely will be continuing next year. But let me share with you some thoughts about, development of renewables in the Southeast Europe. Southeast Europe now is unfortunately divided by a border of the European Union, a border which is not including countries like Western Balkan countries, Moldova and Ukraine. And the role of the energy community is exactly to bridge through this border, to extrapolate the system which are being developed in the European Union to the European neighborhood. And this is exactly the job which we are doing. Minister explained the agenda for renewables in Romania. We are expecting to have the same renaissance of renewables just over the border in Moldova, and I hope that this will be also in details explained today. But let me focus on some policy measures which are now being implemented under the umbrella of the energy community to make the increase of the share of the renewables in the energy mix in the contracting parties of the energy community a reality. First of all, as I said, the energy community process is providing to the countries of the region, to the non-European Union countries in the region, a stable and predictable legal and regulatory framework which is expected by investors. Investors coming from outside, but also from domestic investors who are expecting to have a certain predictability when investing its own money in the renewable projects. This stability is being provided through the proper planning, integrated planning. So that is the reason why in the energy community countries, like in the European Union countries, we are implementing the approach based on the national energy and climate plans. National energy and climate plans being specifically designed to have an integrated approach to both energy and climate transition. And the Energy Community Secretariat is playing exactly the same role which European Commission is playing for the EU member states. So we are providing the countries with our recommendations to make sure that the NECPs are cross-border coherent and they are aligning, but also they are aligned with the targets which have been established in December 2030. The targets I was referring to have been agreed by the ministers in December last year, so this is the novelty, which is also to be reported in this forum. And these targets are expected to provide the share of renewable electricity in the Energy Committee at the level of 31% by 2030. So this is a very ambitious agenda now being implemented. And this agenda also requires the means of implementation. One of these means of implementation is also the legal certainty and regulatory certainty. That is the reason why we have in the Energy Community the same renewable legislation, the RED II directive, which is being right now transposed to the countries. And based on that, what is also expected by investors, some special support schemes are being implemented. And what we are also discussing with contracting parties is to have a proper, clear timeline for implementing the support schemes through the years to come, being much more specific about the expected technologies, expected prices they want to go, expected frequency, for example, for auctioning, etc., etc. And this is the work which is being done right now. But I cannot speak about the Energy Community and not touch a point on Ukraine, the country which is at war, the country which has been attacked by Russia, and Russia targeting the infrastructure, energy infrastructure, including the infrastructure of, for renewable generation. This infrastructure has been, both solar and wind infrastructure have been partially demolished in Ukraine. And is what the Energy Committee is doing now. We are working together with the Ukrainian authorities to restore the renaissance for renewables in this country having a big, tremendous potential for development of renewable energy, not only based on hydropower, which is the more traditional source of renewable energy in this country, but also in solar and wind, and also exploring tremendous potential of the Ukrainian agriculture for providing Europe with decarbonized gases, including in future green hydrogen. Having said that, I also wanted to emphasize the importance of the European Union financial instruments in this regard. The newly adopted growth plan for the Western Balkans is providing these countries with very concrete perspective of financing the reform agenda in these countries. The rolling out of renewables is on the top list of these reforms, and we are hoping that the agenda reform on the agenda for reforms will be agreed very soon with the European Commission, and we could see a positive impacts on this for the development of the renewable market in this region. The second pillar being Ukraine, also Ukraine facility worth 50 billion euro is being developed by the European Commission, also based on the list of the reforms to be expected to be provided in Ukraine, so that the proper energy reforms could be implemented, including the reforms in the renewable sector. So you can see that we are having a lot of different instruments operating on different levels, but always presenting a very coordinated, integrated both planning and extending of the regulatory regime to the region, so that we can explore properly by 2030 and beyond the huge potential for renewables in the Southeast Europe, in the countries not being members of the European Union for now, but I hope it will change immediately. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arthur. I think this provides us a very good starting point for our panel discussion. And let me proceed with inviting our panelists. In fact, we have a very good, a balanced representation of different organizations reflecting or providing different perspectives for our discussion, from international organizations, governments, but also partners. But also we have a very gender balanced, even positively discriminated panel composition. So let me start by inviting Tatiana Molseyan, Executive Director of UNECE. Please, Tatiana, please take your seat. And Arthur, I would like to take you also as a panelist. And then let me also invite Mr. Jeronimo Junia, Director General for Energy and Geology from Portugal. And Sania Capetina, Head of Department for Secondary Energy and Projects, Minister of Foreign Trade and Economic Relations, Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then my good friend Tanya Faller, Program Manager, Climate and Circular Economy, GIZ. And finally, we have also a representative of youth. So Ella Mesanovic, please Ella. All right, I think Arthur already provided some context for our discussion, but I think it is extremely important to understand what national energy and climate plans offer, because they provide actually a very good pathway, a good roadmap for countries for energy transition, how energy transition should take place. At the national level, they provide targets for renewable energy and energy efficiency, as well as for greenhouse gas emission reduction. What is extremely important is obviously how we can translate these targets, NECPs, into actual projects. So how we can implement NECPs and what it takes to implement them. Obviously, the title of the discussion is whether those NECPs and NDCs can serve as financial roadmaps that will facilitate the inflow of capital and finance into energy transition in energy community countries. And this will be the focus of our discussion. And here I would like to start with Tatiana. And obviously Southeast Europe is one of the regions UNEC is covering. And I would like to hear from you your perspective of energy transition and what UNEC is doing and what kind of activities and projects you have in the region to support energy transition.
Thank you. It's working now. Yes? Can you hear me? Yes. You can. Okay. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you both to IRENA and to the energy community for putting together this important event and discussion. And I know that we will be all competing with the neighbors next door in terms of your attention, but even under these challenging conditions, I would like to share with you from the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe a few thoughts, a few reflections. I think most of the points were already covered by the previous speakers quite well, but still I would like to emphasize some of them. So 3 key points that I would like to again underline. First, it's that in the region, the renewable energy is on the rise. This is what we have seen, that a big increase in the renewable energy sources, in particular solar and wind. We've heard the minister speaking also for electricity production. That's great news for the environment, but there's always a but. But we still see that there is a considerable need when it comes to catching up with sectors like transport and heating. So heating, cooling, transportation still heavily rely on non-renewable energy sources, even though they make up about 80% of the energy demand. So this is one key area to reflect upon. Second, we've heard some good news, but still investments in the renewables in this region need to increase. We need more investments in renewables in this region. Comparing data, looking at the data, we see that yes, we had, even for example for this region, we had 7.2 billion invested in the region in 2022, while in Western Europe there's been 56.6 billion investment. So it's already, you see a huge difference. So we will need to really in order to make a real impact, to increase and to get more funding for green and transition projects. The third point that I would like to emphasize is that we have to think really well about energy independence. Right now, we rely heavily on fossil fuels and the countries that export them. I feel you have mentioned quite a few important aspects on countries, on their vulnerabilities. So we really we have to think about renewables not only as a way to act on climate action, but also as a independence and factor for this region. This is a key element in Southern Eastern Europe. So it's not just good for the planet, switching to the renewable energy. It's essential for energy security in the region, and I would say not only to the energy security, but to security in general in this region. Now about what NEC is doing. We are working to scale up and to promote, together with partners in different partnership, to promote renewable energy in the region. What we have found out in this work is that we need really to work. These projects also need a robust infrastructure, like the grid. We can invest a lot, but if we don't have the connecting links, then these investments are not as efficient as we would like them. Another important aspect that we have remarked is that there are increasing costs and bottlenecks in the supply chain that raise the overall cost of the equipment and construction. So we will have to really address this concern. We have, if we want to, I was speaking about the need for more investments, but we need the necessary financing conditions in order to mitigate some of the increasing capital investment costs and some of the risks associated with the region. We also need innovative financial structures or mechanism platforms really to blend public and private capital. Insurance and financial products can play a key role, but also market participants need time to get acquainted with these procedures, and sometimes this slows down the process. We have these discussions under the so-called hard talks that we are having with our stakeholders in countries, not only in this region, but in the NEC is having 56 members, so ranging from North America, Europe, Central Asia. But in this region, in Southeastern Europe and Western Balkans, we are working with Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina via a water energy nexus, in particular in the Drina River basin, and also in our support to closing down coal mines in an appropriate way in Albania and Serbia. So this is some of the projects that we are working now. Also, we have launched innovative financing schemes in cooperation with EBRD in North Macedonia, and it supports investments and in energy efficiency. Now, I don't want to keep too long these discussions, so Southeastern Europe is a focus region for us, so we will continue to work on delivering, and we are counting on, and we just discussed, we had a very good discussion just before that, how we can make our resources, human and the capacities of all our organizations, international partners, the UN, more efficient. So we are ready to work together.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. One of the points you made was how to raise ambition and also speed up deployment of renewables in the region. And you see, I think, everywhere around this pavilion, there's tripling renewables and doubling energy efficiency signs everywhere. And I know in Southeast Europe, some of the countries have signed up to tripling renewables, but I also know that not all of them have signed up to it. So here I would like to turn to a country representative, Bosnia-Herzegovina, to Sanya. I'm not asking the difficult question. I just want to understand, because you're developing an NECP. So I want to hear from the story behind the scene. What are the drivers for you to putting together this NECP for Bosnia-Herzegovina? We work closely, especially from NDC, NECP alignment point of view for Bosnia-Herzegovina. But if you can just elaborate on the NECP process and the outcome.
Okay, I hold it. Yeah, can you hear me now? I think. Okay. Oh, this is good. Thank you for a question, and thank you for invitation to this panel. It's really my honor and pleasure to be here and to discuss about this very important issue. And yes, you're right, and I'm happy that I can say that we prepared our draft of NECP, we submitted it to the Energy Community Secretariat within the given deadline. We are hoping to receive comments soon so that we can adopt it hopefully next year. And I really want to thank IRENA once more for their assistance in the process of NDC and NECP alignment. It is very important to have these two very important strategic documents fully aligned. So our plan is, when we adopted NECP, to update our NDC so to be fully aligned with the targets that Bosnia-Herzegovina defined within NECP. Targets are, when it comes to renewable energy, the same as the one that was adopted by Ministerial Council of the Energy Community Secretariat. Bosnia and Herzegovina is a small country, but with huge potential when it comes to renewable energy. So we could hear that at the energy community level, overall renewable energy target is 31%. For our country, it is 43.62% as share in total final energy consumption. It was not easy to prepare such a complex demanding document such NECP is. That was the first time that we actually start with this integrated approach. We start back in 2019, try to involve all relevant stakeholders. We have more than 120 nominated representatives from various institutions, ministries, operators, regulators, funds, NGOs, financial institutions, donors, and we all work together in order to find the best pathway of Bosnia-Herzegovina, in order to find compromise between different sectors and to define realistic, ambitious targets for Bosnia-Herzegovina. And what was good through this process, that we really improved coordination between different sectors, between different stakeholders, to improve knowledge and understanding of our targets and what is needed in order to achieve those targets. So within our NECP, we defined all needed policies and measures to achieve targets. So if we are speaking, for example, on electricity sector, in this period that we have, 6 years, I would say, because we do not have the same starting point as EU. So we have like 6 years up to 2030. So we are planning to double our renewable energy installed capacity in electricity sector. Currently, we have like 2,500 of megawatts of installed renewable energy capacities, mainly from hydro. And now we are planning 2,100 new megawatts of installed capacity, mainly from solar and wind. So I think it is a clear guidelines for investors what we want to achieve in 2030. And we will see, as I said, we are just at the beginning. But okay, we finished with this NECP, now what is needed, and that was also mentioned, clear legal and regulatory framework. We are working on that. We are working on transposition of EU acquis when it comes to renewable energy, that is Renewable Energy Directive. And I'm happy to say that in our country, now both entities prepared and adopted new renewable energy laws, and district also. What is also needed is to have clear financial mechanisms for investment in renewable energy. So these mechanisms should be sustainable, should be stable, should be long-term based. So it is necessary that each year we provided source from legally binding funds from legally binding source, such as levies or emission allowance or guarantees of origin. That's something that we are also working on. For example, in both new renewable energy laws, certain amount of renewable energy levies foreseen to be collected through electricity bills of electricity consumers and to be used for financing of renewable energy projects, mainly individual small-scale projects such as prosumers and renewable energy communities. We are also working on development of guarantees of origin, of establishment of emission trading system with support of Energy Community Secretariat. So we are really working hard and trying to fully use all this huge potential that we have. But it is necessary among all these things that I mentioned, of course, to use all available funds, such as private funds, commercial banks, microcredit organization, but also international funds, because we will not be able to implement all these activities without international funds as well. Our NECP foreseen 9 billion of euros of needed investments up to 2030 for Bosnia and Herzegovina. That is a huge challenge. So this type of events, exchange of knowledge, experience is very much needed, I would say, in this process. I hope that answers your question.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanya. We will come back to financing energy transition. Especially, I'm going to ask it to Mr. Julia and also to Tanya. But before that, I want to hear from Arthur, because you have been engaged in so many other NECP developments in the region. And if you just tell us, in your observation, how does those NECPs reflect the potentials that countries have versus how it is reflected into NECPs? Do you think this is correctly reflected? Potentials are correctly reflected in NECPs?
The NECPs are rather expected to provide the pathways, the policies and the reforms, the actions to make the countries fully aligned with the targets which has been set up last year. And in this regard, the majority of the draft NECPs which have been already provided to the Secretariat, they are applying this approach. For us, it would be important at some point also to assess whether at the energy community level, the target which has been accepted last year, 31%, is also expected to be provided. But let me, at this stage, go beyond the NECP and, look at the countries of the energy community from a more market perspective. As you said, each and every country is different in the region, and these differences are very visible, and they are obvious to the Secretariat. Our objective is rather to try to find the way to make the energy community as a one integrated market. And it is happening actually, especially in the electricity market. Now we are implementing the legislation which is aiming at establishing so-called market coupling with the European Union. So the countries of the energy community will be included in the market for electricity of the European Union, intraday market, day-ahead market, so that all of these services could be provided to the investors, and also to lower the cost of the balancing services, which is extremely important in this regard. But it also has a second dimension, this dimension of the cost for the consumers. So you have to also remember
that the electricity in the countries of the region is being treated rather as a social right, not as a pure, as a commodity. So it's reflected also in the price for electricity. The price for electricity from the coal power plants now is half of the price for renewables, the caps which are being used for the auctions. So it is quite a challenge for renewable investors to offer them the level playing field in terms of proper pricing, which would allow the investments to grow. This is something which will have the impact on the families, on the affordability of the electricity and energy in the region, so that the proper policies for protection of the vulnerable consumers is needed on one hand. But then we have to also reflect on how to provide this level playing field for renewables and for the fossil fuels energies in the sector. And you have several options. One is to simply withdraw the, for example, coal subsidies, which are still existing, and the coal is still heavily subsidized in the region. You can also introduce the carbon pricing, and this is exactly what we are discussing now with the contracting parties, and we are expecting to receive from our ministers, which are meeting, I think, in a week from now, in Vienna, some more guidance how the carbon pricing discussion in the contracting parties should look like in the future, so that we can provide the proper signals for renewable investors. But what is also very important is, for example, the issue of the guarantees of origin. The system for the energy community is being developed, but the key for this system to start functioning is building a bridge with the European Union system, so that the guarantees of origin from the region could be tradable on the European Union market, which is offering now a demand for these certificates. And this is something which also I hope we will be discussing together with the European Commission soon at the Ministerial Council, and we expect also some progress in this regard.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have a tight timeline, so I would request for brief interventions. But I would like to hear from Geronimo about the Portugal experience, especially how have you set high ambition and then financed energy transition, but still made energy affordable?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And like my colleague comes from a small country, Portugal is also a small country, but that doesn't mean that we lack ambition or we lack on the results. And Portugal was actually one of the first countries in the world to commit to carbon neutrality by 2050. And we already mentioned that we will anticipate this goal 5 years. So we hope to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045, which means that we need to speed up our pace. And our NECP is our main policy strategy. And by 2030, we'll hope to achieve at least 49% renewables in final energy consumption. This means that we need to double our renewable installed capacity by 2030. And we are working on having, for instance, regulatory stability, which is a must to ensure that institutions, that promoters, that the investment is there for the projects. And also, one very important and key element is simplification of the licensing procedures. We've been working in Portugal for the last 4 years in simplifying the legal framework for renewable projects. And for example, with hydrogen production, you don't need to have environmental impact assessment. So that was a huge boost for the hydrogen economy in Portugal. At the same time, we managed to introduce competitive mechanisms to allocate capacity for projects. That was a way also to ensure that projects have a stable environment to be implemented. But this comes with a challenge. And when market conditions change, like the war, like COVID, these projects that go to competitive auctions and they offer a fixed price over 20 years, if you change just a little bit, the projects face risk. And we had it in Portugal. So we needed to ensure that promoters had the support of the government for the projects to move ahead. And for instance, what we did in Portugal was to I'm liking the word in English, to update the tariff according to the inflation. So projects can continue and go to the market. And so this is just one of the examples on how we are introducing this kind of mechanisms to support the transition. And also, just to comment on the exercise of the NECP, like my colleague was mentioning, it's a very, very difficult exercise because you are dealing with industries, you are dealing with agriculture, you are dealing with companies, with citizens, and in the end, you have to deliver a program, a plan, that can answer to those that want more speed, like the young generations that go all day to the streets and demand governments to be to have more speed in energy transition, and those that tells us to go slower. We have some in Portugal, some groups that still dream with coal, and coal is no longer a reality in Portugal. So this is a very a balance that you need to have in these plans in order to deliver something that is a reality, that can be implemented, and that answers to a broad range of people and companies and a range of society. So it's quite a challenge to have an NECP that translates all of this into a piece of paper in tight schedules like the Commission asks us. But I think for us, Portugal, the strategy is fully clear, is fully aligned with the economic opportunity that this is. For us, this is a really economic opportunity. It's not a matter, like also the colleague mentioned, it's not just a matter of environmental impact or fight against climate change. It's also, for us, Portugal, a huge, huge economic opportunity on renewables. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me turn to GIZ, Tanya. Tanya, you have been exposed to, or kind of as a GIZ representative, work in different geographies, from Europe to Africa to Latin America. And from your point of view, how do you see the energy transition in Southeast Europe? GIZ has been supporting the development of NECPs in the region. And how do you see, how do you see these NECPs serving as an investment or finance compass for the region, and how GIZ is supporting the implementation of development and implementation of NECPs?
Thank you very much. So first of all, I think it's exactly what the Director General said. This is a system change, and that's where the NECPs come in, because we're talking about system change. So we're actually unifying different ways of systems and making an NECP which is investable, which can be a requirement for climate finance or any kind of additional finance that countries may seek. And yes, they must seek it because the capital markets are getting tighter and tighter. So even countries in Southeastern Europe will need that, when in the past it was rather the countries that were on a worse economic position. I can be louder than them, don't worry, but I'm not more tasty than the food. So, so one issue is on there. Second issue is, GIZ has been doing that in, I think, 4 out of the countries, and we've had very good experiences with that, because in the very end, if we do not work on that, we have a very fragmented scenario. And fragmented scenarios do not allow for systemic planning and do not allow for system change. So we've been honored to be working with these countries on it. Thirdly, the one thing that I would love to see more in the future, and I'm saying that across all of the economies I've ever worked on, is that we talk on climate tech and digital on one side, But when I see countries doing their NECPs, I see spreadsheets. I don't see artificial intelligence. I don't see satellite logics there. So I hope that in the future, we're managing the system change also to have an ecosystem that we're coming from a technology innovation space more active into a planning space. So that's a hope that I think we would love to see.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Very good points. Ella, now I would like to hear from you the youth perspective on this. How do you see energy transition as someone, a representative of youth coming from the region? And how is it evolving? What are the key challenges or key elements of energy transition from the youth perspective? Is it skills development, education, training, or access of youth to the opportunities? How do you see it evolving?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me actually to this panel, because I do believe that the involvement of youth in these discussions, processes actually is the first step of inclusion. And I think we've heard a lot about how the energy transition could look like, but I would maybe like to get into the points of why youth involvement is actually necessary, and maybe also how the industry can benefit from youth and, well, going into the sector, but also of providing inputs. So what I've seen also through my personal experience and involvement and advocacy, which is focused on like the energy transition, is that young people are actually interested and also want to provide input on how the transition could look like, because they're the ones who are gonna experience all the negative impacts of climate change in the end. So they are the change makers of the future in a sense, being then impacted by global warming, and if the transition is not facilitated fast enough, it's gonna only get worse for them. So what do they bring to the table? Once the motivation to actually push for a faster transition, and on the other hand, then also actually the desire to work in these sectors. So to having green jobs that are gonna enable them to align their personal motivation, but also the work for a more sustainable future. So while they are presented with some barriers that I can also get into in a second, they do provide a lot of benefits to the industry and to the transition itself, because they have certain perspective on what energy systems could look like, but what they're missing sometimes is the enablement. So it is a lot of bottom-up activity, volunteerism, proactive engagement from youth, and kind of chasing down decision makers and trying to incorporate their views and opinions in how a transition should look like, which comes with a lot of time-consuming efforts, but they're mostly, or a lot of the times, not enabled from a top-down approach. So actually having officials actively trying to involve them in decision-making processes and consultations. How do they feel like an energy system of the future should look like, especially in their country, to also enable them to take part in this greener industry that they're envisioning for themselves in the near future. And this also comes a bit, well, in a region that is sometimes faced with young people actually leaving. And why is that? Because they maybe also do not see the perspective of participating in a industry, in a sector that is greener and that provides them with the ability to build a long-lasting, sustainable career. So the push from young people to actually participate in decision-making processes is oftentimes also tied to the need or to the wish to stay in the region. So I believe personally, by involving them and also institutionalizing youth commitment and youth consultation in the processes, you also enable them and push them to actually stay in the region and keep young people that are motivated and that are skilled within your country, and that way also stabilize demographics.
Thank you very much, Ella. Let's conclude our panel discussion with this positive note. And I would like to thank all our panelists for their great interventions. And let's give them a big applause, please.